And I ended up getting a call from a Cincinnati-based international software company. They said, Mark, we want you to, I flew back, did an interview. They wanted to hire me at 4 times the pay that I was getting in the military, and started a career as a support analyst in computer programming. And I said, well, that's for me. That's a great opportunity. So I went to Cincinnati. I was married at the time, reorganized my life, came home because I thought, that's where I want to raise my family, was in Ohio. So I came home and decided that's where we were going to be. But the passion in me wanted to continue to serve others, because that's the kind of person I am, is service over self. So I went back to the police academy. It had to do the Ohio one, because I did the Virginia one. Had to do, states didn't cross over. Did the Ohio one, and then joined the City of Fairfield Police Department as an auxiliary officer. So I had the best of both worlds, my passion to serve others as well as a career. As time went on, I attended Wilmington College, Xavier University, and then made my way, grew through the ranks of the company, and became part of executive management within the software company I was at. And what an experience that was. But all along, I got recruited from the city of Fairfield, which was a big operation, over to Fairfield Township. I don't know how many of you have been down to Butler County in a long time, but Fairfield Township, pretty big place. That's where all the big stores are, the Home Depot, all the restaurant, all that stuff's there. And boy, it's a great place to have a lot of activity. We were busy down there running from a call to a call. We handled 10 to 12 calls a night, and a couple of us. Now, I worked nights and weekends, and I enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. But then, had a son. And it was 1995. He was 5 years old. I said, I want to come home to Sydney, to Shelby County. This is the place to raise a family. I was raised here. I love it. I wanted to be in one school system all the way through. So we came home. I was traveling internationally as well for this company, and I said, look, it's time to start a business right here. So I started a business in Shelby County, Shelby Computer Connection. Started with one person, me. Over 12 years, I grew it to 8 people. We did break-fix work, networking, and I wrote custom programs for a lot of the businesses in the area. And was very successful at it, had great outcomes, hired some great people, and made the company into something that had a lot of value and worth. Meanwhile, what did I want to do? I wanted to continue serving others, right? So when I came back to Shelby County, I went to work for the Village of Anna, part-time, evenings, weekends. A couple of years there at Anna, and guess what? The sheriff's office called me. Chief deputy at the time called up and said, Mark, we want you to come down here and work for the sheriff's office. We recognize what you're doing, what capacities you have, value you have, come to us. I said, fine. So I started working for the sheriff's office. Now, I wasn't the typical part-timer who did 8 hours a month or minimum requirements. I was down there all the time, every weekend, evenings, and I was very active. As a matter of fact, I was the captain of the reserves down there and had 25 different individuals that were part of the reserve organizations I did training for, supervision for. Great folks, great young men and women. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. Did a lot of things. I've investigated crimes. I've made misdemeanor arrests, felony arrests, grand jury, all the things that you would do as a police officer year after year, the same thing that every full-time officer was doing. I was working the road independently, answering calls for service. The guys back then loved to have me there because it was one extra unit. When they only had 2 on a shift, they could back them up on either side, cover them, and somebody who would do the paperwork, right? Not just somebody out to see what the action was about, because paperwork is 80% of this job. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Then 2008 came around. 2008 was a tough year in business, but it was really a great year for me. I was blessed in 2008 because I'd written this cool program that did high-speed imaging and document management, sucked in these documents and put them in electronic form. I had a company down in Cincinnati that wanted the rights to it because they were putting it with all of their software. So they said, gosh, instead of just keep writing checks for selling it, we want to buy your company. So I was one of those fortunate ones in 2008 that sold my company to an international software company. And it was great. All those years in sweat and tears we had developed, the 12 years of Shelby Computer Connection were now paying off. And I made sure every employee got to go to that company because they had a position. But we worked out of Englewood. And it was great. And they made me part of their executive management. Lots of people working for me, but they said, hey, you know something about public safety, don't you? I said, yeah. They said, that's good because we want to rewrite all of our public safety, 911, computer-aided dispatching, records management, all of those systems, warrant processing, property room management, on and on. All these things, we need them all rewritten so that it's all current stuff. Not the old green screen IBM stuff. Yeah, you've been there, obviously. So I did that. 2 years. One of the first places we put it, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Pat can testify to that. He's used it for a lot of years as a dispatcher. It was a good system. Actually, it was a great system, I think. It really encompassed everything that you needed to do. Because I knew the job. I knew public safety. Who else do you want building your computer systems, right? And somebody that knows how they should work, knows the job. So not only is it being used today in Shelby County, but it's also being used at all those other counties surrounding us. Champaign County, Logan County, Auglaize County, Hardin County, some of the bigger cities, Huber Heights, Englewood, Middletown. About 50 different agencies across Ohio use the software that I designed and built to run their public service agency. So I think I know a little something about public safety because I was able to do this. Not only that, somebody asked me the other day, well, what's the biggest place you've ever done as far as putting in the 911 stuff? I said, well, I had to think about that for a second, but it's the whole country of Haiti. Yeah, the whole country of Haiti. Now, they don't use 911 down there. It's 114. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? You're saying, we're just so ingrained up here that we put out 911 and everybody knows that number. But down there, they didn't have that. So now they've broadcasted 114. Comes into a emergency operations center that they put together, that we put in 30 different workstations for people to answer those 911 calls. And I went down there for a couple of weeks with about 4 or 5 others and put it all in, made it happen. After the 2010 hurricane had wiped them out, now they have 911 capabilities down there with mapping to the cell phones. So that was really a great experience that I loved. So that was 2008 for a while, and then I was, a couple of years after I built that in 2011, they recognized again that this is their guy. They promoted me to the CEO of the company. I had 60 plus people, one point in time 65 people working for me. $10 million budget, financial background, professional management education, to be able to drive 10 to 15% profit and gain each year for this company based upon doing good things, right? And I loved it, and I loved the employees. It was a great spot to be in. But I also recognized the value of creating a successor, right? So I did. I mentored several individuals to say, I'm not going to be here forever. And I had several individuals that could follow in my footsteps. Meanwhile, 2012 came along, and I said, well, we had some problems down at the sheriff's office. New sheriff came in. And I just posted this the other day, and I wasn't really going to even say anything about it, but I just didn't agree with the current administration, so I left. Right? I had that flexibility to be able to do that because it wasn't my full-time gig. I had a career that I was making great money at, but I still wanted to continue my passion. So when I left the sheriff's office, I went over to Champaign County. Went over to talk to Sheriff Matt Melvin because I knew him for years because of the public safety software systems. He says, yeah, I can use you. I want a guy like you to be a part-timer for me and to help train others. I went up to the village of Botkins here in Shelby County, worked for Chief Tom Glass, wonderful guy. He said, heck yeah. He says, I can use you. You can help train others. And as a matter of fact, he said, you're going to be the sergeant because you know how to lead. You know how to take care of these things. We want you to be in that position. I said, okay, fine. And was happy to do that. So over the last 7 or 8 years, I haven't been part of the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I've been off doing other things in public safety. But now I really want to be able to go back to Shelby County and do what I did in my own backyard is protect and serve the citizens of Shelby County and to give them the abilities that I have in those successful outcomes. So that's kind of why I'm running for Shelby County Sheriff. I then left the company in 2018 to start my campaign or bid for Shelby County Sheriff and handed the company over to my successor because I was prepared to do that. And I have been blessed all that time. So here we are, a year and a half into the campaign. And I'm just happy that you guys came out to say hello, ask your questions, and see us tonight, and share some of your stories with us as well. But that's my story and why I'm running for Shelby County Sheriff. Because I want to see some change too. See, that's the other thing. I want to see some things change. Now, my opponent very clearly came out and said on several occasions, but one right in front of me and the Mayor's Association in Shelby County said, I don't want to change a thing. And I believe that. He likes how things are. I want to see some change. There are a lot of things I want to see change, but some of the big ones are, I want to see a sheriff's office where inmates don't die. And, you know, that's a tough thing to come out and say publicly because you're going to get attacked for saying something like that. But it's a fact that over the past 8 years, 3 inmates died in the Shelby County Jail, or as inmates. 3. Not 1 where you're scratching your head going, what's going on down there? Not 2 where you're saying, wow, what's happened? But 3. That concerns the heck out of me. Because the prior 17 years since that jail's been built, 0 inmates have died. Something's going on here. You got to ask yourself a question. Any person with common sense would say, what's going on? The only thing that's changed is that administration and some of their policies and procedures. That concerns me, and it should concern you too, and everyone in this county. Why? If you have a brother, a father, a sister, a son, a family member, somebody you love that does something they shouldn't have done. They're not an evil person, but they made a mistake and they end up in that Shelby County Jail. It happens. Now you got to ask yourself, are they coming home? Should we have to ask ourselves that question? No. That should be a given because the sheriff's job is to make sure that we look after those inmates' safety, right? We're responsible for it. Now, I'm not saying anybody down there specifically is responsible for those deaths, but they should be accountable. And if they are not accountable to the system, they need to be accountable at the ballot box. That's a very important thing that concerns the heck out of me. So that's one thing. I want to see a sheriff's office where inmates don't die. The other big thing is I want to see a sheriff's office that partners with all the other agencies. Not just law enforcement, but all other agencies there are. They're currently isolated. They've isolated themselves and created an empire for it. And it's time that that goes away. Because crime doesn't know any border. It doesn't know, oh, I'm at the city of Sydney right here, and over here I'm at the village, or they don't care. They're going to do the crime wherever they're doing the crime. Those agencies need to work together to facilitate a stronger Shelby County area in law enforcement. I've got a lot of examples where they don't work together, and if you want to talk about those offline, we can. But I promise to make sure that that's one of the first things I do, is try to bring those agencies back together again, whichever ones they are. Bring them back together, work together, because I don't have the baggage that the current administration has, right? And I'm a communicator, and I will communicate with them, and we'll sort those things out. I would actually like to see what's called, I don't know if you guys have heard this from me or not, but you probably have, an exchange program. How many of you have seen before, a student exchange program, right? Well, I know the McGrills over there. Their daughter Heidi went overseas, right? And then they had some folks come over and stay with them. Isn't that a neat concept? Why is it that we couldn't have an exchange program with the Sydney Police Department where their dispatchers come over and work a week or two with us, ours go over there and work a week or two at the same time? Cross-train, understand how somebody else does business. Why is it that city police officer can't come over and work with our deputies and our deputies go over there? If you do that kind of thing, it starts bringing people together, right? Great outcomes from something as simple as an exchange program. Just a thought. So, back to my list again. I also want to see a sheriff's office that creates what's called a sheriff's chaplain program. That's important to me because several sheriff's offices out there today, Erie County, Franklin County, and the list goes on, have a chaplain program. What it is, ordained ministers have the opportunity to come in, put the uniform on, put a little rocker on their sleeve that says chaplain. They're one of us. They become one of the sheriff's office. But they can have privileged communications with the deputies as they're riding along, or with the police department too. And they can be there for crisis counseling and grief counseling. Because I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years and very active at it. Seen a lot of things you don't want to see. Most of us in this business, we don't come home and talk about it either. And it builds, right? And it builds. And if you don't have an opportunity to let that out in some form or fashion, it brings you down. It puts you in a bad spot. Unfortunately, there is a stigma in mental health. And Mike will be the first one to tell you this. He's even testified at the state level and done videos when it comes to mental health for them on how that's important. It is important, but if you can't go that direction because of the stigma, why don't we have a program in-house where you can talk to someone? They can ride along with you. We're not forcing it on anybody. It's not forced faith, but they're there for you. When you get ready to go to a door where you just get a phone call that says, hey, somebody just died in a car accident. Those death notifications are one of the worst kind of calls you can get. If they're horrible. You get trained, but it still doesn't make it any easier any time. But it's so much more comforting going in with somebody who is a member of the faith community. Walking in with you, they know how to handle the grief counseling. They're there for those people. It makes the whole situation healthier and better in those notifications. So there are many opportunities to use a sheriff's chaplain program. And I just go back to, why don't we have one? I will when I become the next sheriff of Shelby County. So these are just a few examples of the things that I would like to see in our sheriff's office change. One more is when it comes to the jail, there's been folks that are telling me that they're vaping down in jail. They sell them these vape pens. Did you know that, to vape in jail? And they're also getting takeout pizza, or they can order pizza from Little Caesars, the $5 Little Caesar pizza. They get it in and they charge them $12 for it, whatever that amount is. Okay, but as I start looking at that, and then I start looking at the jail deaths, I'm saying, what's changed? These are some of the things that have changed. I'm not saying they're horrible or bad, but I'm thinking, if you've been watching the news, that vaping is bad for you, right? Have you seen how the statistics are going through? Even my opponent has put out a news article that said vaping is bad for you. And it's his program that he started for vaping in jail. So I agree with him that vaping is bad for you, and we don't want to see any class action lawsuits come up because one of the inmates 3 or 4 years from now decides he's going to file one because he's got bad lungs, right? So these are the issues that I want to attack, the things that I want to see in a sheriff's office. And with that said, just remember these things. 30 plus years sworn law enforcement. 20 years as a chief executive officer. So I've got professional management, education, financial experience, which is what the chief executive office is of law enforcement, is the sheriff. I'm not running to be the chief jailer or chief detective, but the chief executive officer of law enforcement. And last but not least, honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. Those 4 words I started with. Those are at my core. I believe in those. I live my life by those. And if you look at my history and talk to people who know me, you'll find out those things to be true. So at that point, I'm ready to start taking some questions. I know I've taken up 20, 30 minutes of your time here, but what kind of questions do you have of me? And I'll answer anything you got, because I got nothing to hide.
Well, I've only been in Shelby County about a year now, so I don't have the background and stories of who's did what to whom and all of that kind of stuff. I was intrigued by the fact that when a new sheriff came in, you didn't feel like you could work well with that person or under their administration, and so you left. You didn't stay and just cause issues and things like that. So I'm impressed by that.
I never made it public until I got called out on some things, and I said, look, you guys got to know the truth.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what was it that you saw in this new sheriff that came in that you just couldn't work under that kind of leadership?
Okay, so your question is, why did I leave the Shelby County Sheriff's Office in 2012? What were the things I saw that I couldn't work under that leadership? And that's a good question. I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. And I certainly don't want to do that, because that's not my character either. I will tell you this, and this is something I just recently said online, which is one of the biggest reasons is because I was working the road by myself, taking out a unit whenever I wanted to, weekdays, weeknights, weekends, and helping out whatever shift that was working at that particular time. They were used to me coming in, glad to see me. You take Central Section, you take East Section, Jordan, we got you, you know? I did that for 15 years down there. So I knew those folks. They knew me. Came in one day after the new administration, just shortly afterwards, and they said, oh, no, you can't. You got to talk to the boss because they've grounded the reserves. I said, grounded? What's that mean? So I went and talked to them. And they said, well, yeah, you know, you're just not going to be able to go out and work road patrol because we can't afford the fuel. Now, the fuel wasn't exorbitant back in 2012. I mean, it wasn't over $3 a gallon. But they said, we can't afford the fuel. That was the reasoning they came up with. And I said, are you kidding me? You're paying these guys to work this shift $25 an hour, 8 hours. I'm free. The finances just don't make sense. You're telling me you can't afford a $20 tank of gas to have a third road deputy out there taking care of problems. That's the problem? And they said, yeah, I guess that's it. So I said, well, you know, that doesn't make any sense to me. There must be something else going on here, something else at play. So I said, fine. And then the sheriff said, look, stick around 6 months. This will probably change, you know, everything will be fine. So I said, fine, I'll do that. I stuck around. I worked the little shifts here and there for whatever they needed. Visitation, where you had folks coming in for jail. I did a lot of visitation for them. I did some other ball games, whatever. 6 months went by, and nothing. I went back in. I said, Sheriff, you know, I'd like to start working for you again, because I came out to do this as a second career. I came out to help people, not to be the guy that only worked 8 hours a month. I love those folks because you got to have that kind of manpower. But I want to give a whole lot more. Let me have that opportunity. And he says, no, he says, we just can't afford to cost fuel. Fine. So that's when that, amongst many other things that I won't go into, came up, and I said, look, it's just time for me to exit. Because I could. And it's an integrity issue. To me, more than anything, remember I said honesty, integrity, transparency. It's an integrity thing. I had too much integrity to stay and do something that I knew didn't make good common sense. So I had the ability to get up and go. And that's when I went and saw Sheriff Matt Melvin over in Champaign County, who, you know, open arms, heck yeah, we'd love to have you, right? And at the same time, Botkins, chief I've known up there for many, many years, just very ecstatic. He said, really? Come on, you start tomorrow. You've been a known capacity in Shelby County for a lot of years. You start tomorrow. And I'm so glad I did. You know, we all have journeys. And this particular one took me in a different direction. I'm so glad I did. Because of the young men and women that I got to train up in Botkins. I mean, Botkins it's a small village. So it's not very busy. You know, I was telling you earlier about Butler County. I mean, gosh, I was running call to call, right? Crash here, domestic here, a theft there. up there, you might get one call a shift, but other than that, you're monitoring traffic, you're stopping and saying hello. It's small town policing, which is a little different, but it's great stuff. You have the time and opportunity to talk to people. And you have the time and opportunity to train someone. It's not rush, 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 you're in the fire. It's let's sit down and talk and go through. So I created a great training program for these youngsters up there. We put them through the training program. It's an equivalent to a 3-week training program. They come in and ride along, and probably the second time they're riding, guess which seat they're in? Mm-hmm. They're not on the passenger seat because I want them driving. Now, that's a pretty scary thing. It's like being a driving instructor, right? All of a sudden you're like, I don't have a brake over here. But you trust them, right? You gotta build that trust with them. So you get to learn a lot about some of the youngsters and their values and what's important to them, and guide them and mentor them and help them to go to the next stage, because we know that they're not going to be a full-time police officer in Botkins, at least not very long, because a lot of the youngsters want to work where there is action. I get that, right? It's just one of those things. So I've been fortunate enough to train dozens of young men and women. They stick around for a while, they do the job, they fulfill the requirements we have, help us fill our shift, and then if they find full-time opportunity somewhere, we gladly say, we'll give you recommendations based upon the fact we've given you good training. I just had one last week. Started the Ohio State Highway Patrol Police Academy. Great youngster. And I'll say this too, probably shouldn't, but first few days go by, he gets to come home on weekends, and he says, I said, how's it going? He says, oh, it's rough. I don't know. He says, I don't know if I can do this or not. Did I say, oh, sure, you can do this, or it's okay? No. You ask Lori. I jumped on him. I got so, well, I won't go there, but I jumped all over him and said, look, you will do this. You got it in you. I know you do. I've seen it. And I made him promise me that he would finish the job that he set out to do, because if you make a commitment, by gollies, honor that commitment. Do what you're supposed to do. After that conversation, he says, yep. And guess where he went Monday? Back to school. The end of this week, calls me back again. He says, you're the boss. He says, I'm feeling a lot better about this now. Which I knew it was only that first couple day jitter thing, right? Where they try to get you to remove yourself because you don't have what it takes. I knew he had what it took. I've got folks that went to city of Dayton, worked in Dayton. One of them's a homicide detective down there now. Great young man. Folks that are all over this country. One in West Virginia as a state patrolman. I got another one that went to Ohio State Patrol. A couple went to police departments across Ohio. So they started their journey with me, and now they are prepared for whatever else life brings them. And that to me is such an important thing. And I know I've rambled on about your question, which was, why did I leave? Yeah. I left because I knew I needed to, and I had integrity. But I'm glad I left, right? Because I'm not playing politics. I'm not playing that stuff. I'm doing what's right, and what's right for everyone else around me, because that's who I am, and I'm a leader. Number one, I mentioned it earlier, 3 deaths in the jail. This is just a fact. Now, not in the jail. When I say it, and I said it earlier, what did I say? 3 inmates died. Because I knew that's what they do, is play a game there, right? Oh, if I say 3 inmates died in the jail, you can take one of those away, because they didn't actually expire in the jail. Where'd they expire? The hospital, or en route to the hospital, right? Does it matter? They admitted 2 of them did right in the jail. It doesn't matter. The thing that matters is, yeah, there were 3 inmates that are now gone. Somebody's father, somebody's brother, sister, mother, like I told you earlier, are gone. Now, your second thing was 911 system. Yeah, that came out. That was very sad. I know this because I know 911 well. Pat will attest to that. That I've built some of these systems, or all of these systems they use down there. My concern immediately when I heard this was, did the system fail? And lo and behold, it didn't. The system worked exactly the way it was designed. Somebody calls into 911. It rang into Sydney PD. Well, but Sydney PD was already on a 911 call, so what happens? It rolls over to some other partnering agency, which was Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Well, by the time that had occurred, she had already dialed 911 and the boyfriend hung it up. So it was a hang-up. So the dispatcher gets the hang-up call, sees it plotting, and hey, it shows up, they got a map down there, this little computer screen that shows up with a map, and it puts a big plot right there on the map, right at Fair and Spruce. And it tells you on the screen, this is where this call's coming from, because years ago we couldn't find that out. We had a case years ago from a lady by the name of Miss Ireland who was kidnapped, thrown in her trunk, assaulted. She had a cell phone in her pocket. She's in this dark trunk with a cell phone calling 911 while somebody's driving around town. Couldn't find her. She didn't know where she was at. Her cell phone pinged off a tower. Well, that person could have been anywhere within a 5-mile radius of that tower. So we're out looking for her. And this unknown vehicle, she had no clue where she was at, because we didn't have the technology to tie that phone to a particular GPS location. And that was sad, because unfortunately she didn't make it. This was one of the things we did back, that was 2007. After that, to make sure that we had E911, where when a call came in from a cellular phone, not only did it show you the tower, but then you could rebid it, boom, plots it on the map. Within a certain amount of accuracy, here's where that cell phone's at. Not the tower, but the cell phone. Well, we had it in this case. So what's the dispatcher do? They call back the number. Well, that's standard policy across all agencies, right? Call back the number, see if we can get hold of them. Of course, nobody answers. Now, at that point, standard policy across the state, as far as I know of, hang up. They left a message. Hey, if it's a problem, give us a call back. That's not standard policy, but that's what they did. Standard policy for anybody that can plot it on a map would be to send a deputy or an officer. In this case, since it's in Shelby County, or not just in Shelby County, but in Sydney, where should you go? Call Sydney back. Hey, look, I had a 911 call that got plotted at Fair and Spruce. Can you check it out? That would have been the thing to do. But they get a lot of calls from off the interstate, evidently, is what I understand. And so they turned it up, or I'm sorry, didn't turn it up. They listened on the headset to see what those 12 seconds were. And the dispatcher said he didn't hear anything. I believe if that's what they said, he didn't hear anything. So they chalked it up to a pocket dial. You know, we've all done that, right? Cell phone, pocket dial. And they said, okay, it's a pocket dial. They close the call, everything's gone. Nobody knows, and she got beat for an hour. Tased, beat. Yeah. Fortunately, she was able to walk out of there because she negotiated with her ex-husband, boyfriend, whomever he was, and he let her go. And then he turns around and commits suicide. So the response from the other side, Pat, was, oh, it all worked out okay. Did it? Did it work out okay? We didn't do what we were supposed to do. And on top of that, somebody died. I don't care if it was the one that beat her up and was holding her hostage. That's a person. That's a human being. Someone still died. So are you sure that that's the right outcome? I'm not going to say I'm sure of that. I don't think the ends justifies the means in that case. I really don't. And let me make sure I'm really clear about this too. John Lenhart did some good things in this county. I'm not standing up here saying I hate John Lenhart or Jim Fry. They're people, right? John Lenhart has done some good things in the county. He has. He's put his time and effort forth to, arm teachers in the schools and make sure that we had a school resource officer program to cover our schools and make our children safe. It's a good thing. I believe that was a good thing. He spent some of his time and effort in building the Star House. Now, we don't know where that's going to go yet. It's too early to tell. But he was able to help get funding for that. He was able to build a new animal shelter with funding and other folks. Those are all great things. He was able to acquire $1 million+ to do a upgrade or modification to the jail to change the booking area so that it had ventilation, because Stark County got shut down because carfentanil got in the air over there and they had to shut it down and clear it out. Smart thing to do. So I'm not saying John Lenhart hasn't done good things in the county, but while he was doing all that, who was running the operations? Who was running everything? My opponent. So hopefully my opponent won't say, no, I'm not responsible for any of this stuff, because that's who was in charge, right? That's the truth of the matter.
He said he was responsible for day-to-day operations.
Absolutely. So again, I'm not going to bang away on my opponent, but I was surprised when he said, I don't need a chief deputy, right? Because if you're going to make sure that you're doing the main things the sheriff needs to do, be a good communicator, be a good guy when it comes to financial analysis, budgeting, and fiscal conservatism. Those are key. If you're going to do those things, and you're going to look at newer, bigger, better programs, right? Training efforts for all your folks, and organize and manage and run like a good CEO should, an agency, you need a guy running operations, don't you? That's what you do in the private sector, is you got a guy running operations for you. So I don't know how on earth he thinks he could do both or would want to do both. That'd be interesting. But thank you for those questions, and hopefully that answers your questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the chaplain program.
Yes.
It sounded like that was officer-focused for your deputies and maybe other employees as well.
Yes. And inmate. I didn't mention it.
Okay, that was where I was going. That was part of what I was going to ask, was the chaplain program, who does that cover? And then also other faith-based organizations, like I think right now the Gideons go in there?
Yes, they do.
Okay. What's your feelings on that and how that would all work?
I think the more opportunity we have faith-based organizations to interface with folks who have been incarcerated or are being incarcerated is a beautiful opportunity. Because we all make mistakes. I said this earlier. Years ago when my son was, 6, 7 years old, going through Sydney schools, I was a deputy, and he asked me to come in. He says, Dad, come in, talk to the kids. Great. And then I'm thinking, well, what am I going to say? And I said, please, Lord, help me say what I'm going to say. And one of the things I decided to tell him was, you know what? If I were to make a circle like this, okay, and inside of that circle are all the folks that I've arrested. And then I go like this, in that circle of that circle. Those are the folks that truly were evil. Everybody else just made a mistake. They did something wrong, and they're going to pay for it, in whatever sentencing the judge gives them or whatever, is handed down to them. So they made mistakes. So why don't we offer that opportunity to be able to, as I'm a Christian, to be able to touch their lives with something that can help change their lives? I've seen, now again, there's a separation from church and state, and I'm very familiar with that and very aware of it. And there are things we cannot do. But there are opportunities too. Don't we want to set them on the right path? What's the whole goal in law enforcement? And I tell this to the youngsters every time I train them. What's the goal in law enforcement? What are you trying to do? Mike will look at me because he knows.
Rehabilitation.
Change behavior. When I pull you over for speeding, I'm ready to write you a ticket? No. What do I want to accomplish? I want to change your behavior. I want you not to speed. I can change that behavior in a very series of ways, right? Doesn't require a ticket. As I talk to you about that behavior, you're going to give me indicators and talk to me and tell me whether or not you understand what you did needs changed. If you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, officer, I'm late, I'm going to a birthday party, and I got to go to the bathroom. I get that one all the time, too. But you tell me these things, you're being honest, you're being open, and you're saying, I get it. I shouldn't have been going 10, 15 mile an hour speed limit. What am I going to do? I'm going to say, ma'am, sir, look, I'm going to issue a verbal warning. Now, it goes in our system, so we know how many times you get a warning. You only get a couple, right? But I'm going to give you a warning. If you will promise me that you will change your behavior and slow down. And when you look me back in the eye and say, yes, I will, I feel pretty good about it, because I know for at least the next 6 months. Now, after 6 months goes by, you might have forgotten about me, right? That's how we repeat change of behavior. Everything we do is about changing behavior. And it's the same with folks who are incarcerated, right? What do you want them to do? You don't want them to come back. I don't want to see them back there. What's the best method we've got to try to not see them back? Maybe we can connect them with a higher power, right? Maybe we can get them into understanding that what they did wasn't correct, and we change their behavior. Behavior is the hardest thing in the world to change, right? Sometimes it's nearly impossible, but that's what we want to do. And I think we can get those chaplains to be part of the inmate system. Now, again, after they're out too, there's recovery opportunities where you deal in the biggest problems, drug, alcohol, and violence going on out there. They can deal with that stuff. And these are people who, as ordained ministers, not particularly one secular function, can go out and do that job of helping to reach out to those people. I want to see that, because we can make a difference.
Have you seen it work before?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. See, I've been to those other agencies.
Right.
I've seen it. I've seen it work before at Richland County. I've seen it work up in Hardin County. It brings comfort and solace in the notification area. It brings comfort and privileged communications to the officer, and it can change behavior for anybody that's running a jail or has inmates. Absolutely. And I'll post some more stuff. Follow my Facebook. I'll show you some of the Sheriff's Association National Chapter has a whole thing on it. So,
to go right along with that, after the forum, Sonia and I were talking on the way home, and when somebody's incarcerated and they need change, I want the chaplains to do the job. I don't really think that pizza and vapes is going to get it done. I really thought that's what I saw as the dynamic there. Well, we're going to change people by this, or your choice, God. I kind of...
Common sense, right? Common sense says, gosh, do we want to make it comfortable for them to be in jail and have them order pizza and have and have them have a cigarette that's addictive, and maybe they didn't do it before and they quit smoking, now they're going back to it. I don't want to introduce all the pain and suffering back to them and go through this reward program. And by the way, when you say pizza is a reward, isn't that a double-edged sword? Because, yeah, they get the reward to have pizza, but who's paying that 3 times street value for the pizza? Their family is, right? That commissary account. So are you really rewarding them? No, you're building other things on the back of that reward.
One more thing that's
Double-edged sword.
difficult for the family.
Yeah. Those kind of things concern me, and that's why, are we going to lose any money out of it? I'm hoping that inmates who are buying pizzas might end up getting more ramen noodles or something, because that's what they want, something to fill the time need. So I think there will be an exchange in some of that revenue stuff. But here's a good thing to know if you don't know it. That vaping and the pizza thing, that all is commissary money. They run what's called a commissary, a little grocery store, if you will. So as an inmate, my family, friends, whomever, can put money electronically into my account, and I can buy so much a week out of the commissary. All of that money that goes in and the prices paid, all accounted for in a separate ledger, set of books called the commissary fund. By the Ohio Revised Code, That money is not to be used or mixed with general fund money. It is only to be used for the inmates and/or some personnel costs associated with people doing that job of running the commissary, not for somebody who's a corrections officer watching people in a pod, right? So those people that say, oh, you're taking away revenue if you pull back the pizza thing or the vaping thing, this is revenue that taxpayers are going to have to make up. Wrong. Because none of that's taxpayer money to begin with, right? This is all commissary money that comes in, and they're not buying things that would ever have come out of the general fund to begin with, only from this fund that is the commissary money. So don't let them play that shell game with you either. That's an important thing to remember. Thanks for that. Yes, sir.
Mark, do you think some of the efforts that are in place currently, such as the Star House,
Yeah.
Family Resource Center, I saw in the paper Mike's involved with the Sydney Addiction Assistance
Yep.
Team. How are those things working? And then are there any other creative ideas that you have that would improve things from a more of a proactive standpoint as opposed to reactionary?
Okay, so make sure I understand your question, which is, what other proactive ideas are there that we may have in regards to some of the recovery programs like the Star House, the recovery team Mike's on, et cetera? What are the other creative ideas? And
Just
how are those
anything
working?
to sort of deter from the other side.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's start with Star House. Again, you know, I don't know what the colloquial term is, but we don't know yet, basically, whether or not that's going to be successful. I say that because it did not open not too long ago, right? I've had a runaway from there. There's been several that have gone to the Star House program and walked away from it. I had one at the Botkins. I had to go. They issued a warrant for his arrest because that's a probation violation. I had to go find him. And we found him. Arrested him. Took him back to jail. He served a sentence. Boom. So there's been several of those. Now they say they've graduated a couple. I don't know who they are. I think I heard them say the other night there were 7 people in. There's 20 beds down there. You know, again, it's all a money-based program. They have to pay to be in there. I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but they have to pay $50, $60 a week or something to be there. It's a pay-to-stay kind of thing. They have to pay for all their own groceries. They give them a place to put it. I think it has potential, but the years that I've been doing this, government-run organizations to do recovery, I've not seen them be successful. I've been doing a lot of years. Mike can probably speak to that as well. It's typically the ones that are faith or spiritually based. They get people to change their behavior, right? Because that's what we want. We want them to change their behavior. God bless them. I want them to kick the drugs. We have a drug problem, just like every other city or county in this nation. I would love to go. I'd like to go after the source of that drug problem. This is a whole nother conversation to have, which is I-75, 20 miles from the 85-mile marker up to the 105-mile marker. That's a source, the pipeline coming through. You think, we got 2 drug dogs. What are they doing? Go look at well, you guys don't have access to the statistics, that's right, of the number of grand jury cases that they've taken for drugs. I could tell you. They had last year, Sydney police had about 150 some cases that were felony grand jury indictments on drugs. Sydney. Sheriff's office had 42. What's that tell you?
They're not out there doing their job on drugs.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, what's that tell you?
What that number tells me.
So, but let me go back to your original question, which is, what ideas do we have in place? I know somebody who is an expert at this, has been doing this for a whole lot of years, that loves people, is compassionate, knows the job, knows the right people, and he's sitting in this room. And he's the guy that has those kind of ideas. So trust me, when there will be opportunity for ideas, he's the guy that's going to be whispering in the ear. He's the guy that maybe someday will be part of that organization to make those things count, to make a difference. Because you ask anybody in Shelby County, who deals the most with recovery and recovery programs? Give me a name of somebody in law enforcement or in the community that deals with, I know Mike's sitting over there, don't do this, Mark. Don't tell him how great I am. It's true.
I think Mike's the name in Shelby County.
He is the man who's been doing this all his life. And how has he been successful at it? Knows his stuff. Details matter, like I said earlier. He's the man that knows his stuff, knows the people to call. Hey, whenever I have a problem where I need to reach out and get somebody help, who do I call? Mike McGriff. Just like every other person that has half a brain in this county, they call and reach out to Mike McGriff. Not because Mike's got magic dust in his bag and say, well, we'll push, he says, I wish, we'll push this over here and over there, but because he connects with these people who are afflicted by that disease. He knows them. He goes to the meetings, the family of addicts, the NA, AA, Al-Anon. I'm stretching. Any other ones there, Mike?
I haven't done AA or Al-Anon.
You haven't done AA or Al-Anon.
But I also go to funerals.
And he goes to
Exactly. Exactly.
He's the man that knows these things. And so here's the thing, and I said this earlier, I'm not running to be the chief detective or the chief jailer. I'm not going to be the expert. I don't have to be a sniper to run for sheriff. I don't have to be, like I just said, the chief detective to run for sheriff. I'm going to be the leader of the organization. And in leading it, I'm going to hire great people, said earlier, great staff, and get people that I know will make a difference in other people's lives and bring those ideas and programs together. I'm not a genius. I'm not the guy that has all the answers to everything. But there's a whole lot of genius running around out there that a good manager, leader, could recognize and bring to the table. So let's talk about that for a second. 20-mile stretch of interstate, we're not working. And we don't partner with agencies like OSP, the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I mentioned that in my opening statements. We don't partner with City PD. They have a little section in there. Why don't we partner with them and create a drug task force? Drugs is the number one problem we really have.
Right.
If you're paying any attention at all. And if you really boil it down, the biggest problem anybody has anywhere in law enforcement is either drugs or alcohol. They cause 80 to 90% of the problems we see. They cause the violence. They cause the theft. They cause all of those other things. So why aren't we attacking the sources of that drug pipeline? City PD had a great bust, a day or two ago? Just a regular old traffic stop downtown Sydney. They get the guy with 96 caps of heroin or fentanyl or whatever it was. It was bad. That's great. They're actively looking for that stuff. We're not. Sheriff's office not. I don't see it. I won't say they're not. I don't see it. I don't see it in the statistics. I don't see it in the day-to-day operation. They got 2 canines, not just 1, but 2 now. And they're trained and ready to go. Well, let's put them to work on a task force, at least one of the dogs, right? The complaint has always been, oh, you can't take manpower away from county residents to go work this interstate highway. Baloney, right? That's
The
affecting
interstate
us.
highway is causing some of our problems.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it needs to be said. But back to your question. So the 20 miles, I'm not complaining, and don't get me wrong, because I know I've been up here, and I really, 2 things I want to tell you. I've said the word I so many times, I'm ashamed of myself. I never say I. It's usually we, because it's all about team. But Lori's been on me this last 60 days. She's laughing over there. She says, Mark, you got to start talking about what you're doing. You've got to say that word I, even though it's not in your vocabulary. So I'm saying it just because we got to push it forward. That's not me. I'm usually a us, we, let's get it done. Now, as far as, I'm not complaining either. I'm not saying the other side is not doing everything they could do in their minds. But I think I have solutions to some of these problems. And I see them as a problem, and I think other people do too, right? We can work that 20 miles of highway, but we do it by partnering. We get Ohio State Patrol, we get the Sydney Police Department, we get the village police departments who are get one call for service, like I told you, that want to be engaged. We make sure that they're trained, funded correctly. And they have a mandate to do interdiction on the highway. They do drug interdiction. There's training for that, to say, let's use those dogs, let's use this manpower. But together, we can do more together. Not on the backs of the sheriff's office budget and all that. Together, we can do more. And it can be successful. And we could rid the streets of the problem of us being a drop-off point. Because where are the drugs at? I can tell you. Any law enforcement in this county should be able to tell you where's the drug problem at. Sources in Lima, sources in Springfield, sources in Dayton. All your bigger cities that surround us, right? That's where it's all coming from. We have a lot of people that are going there, getting it and bringing it back. Hence this 2 days ago traffic stop with 96 caps. Guy went down to Dayton, Lima, wherever he went, bought what he was going to buy, brought it back to use or distribute. How are they getting there? They're right on the interstate highway. There's a monthly meeting. It's called Shelby County Chiefs of Police Association. All of the chiefs in the county, city police department, village chiefs, and the sheriff are invited to this meeting to share ideas, to share information and status of things. It's a communication amongst all the bosses in the county.
And OSP.
Thank you, Mike. I forgot about that. And OSP comes to that too. For the last several years that I know of, because I've been to them, as the sergeant, a lot of times I have all the knowledge and statistics. I'll sit there with the chief, or maybe he's on vacation. I'll stand in his place. Sheriff's office doesn't participate. Why do you suppose that is? OSP's there. Might be why, because they don't like OSP. Sydney's always there. All of the other villages are always there. Sheriff's office not there. Is that a broken relationship in your mind? Yeah, and that's kind of the basic, that's just one thing. I could give you 15 more things that would be examples of how they either don't participate in training opportunities, they don't participate in things, they're isolated. Well, thank you guys for the opportunity to at least have the discussion, because you know what? I'm willing to talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. Nothing to hide. I got answers. I'm not complaining about the other side. I just want to make sure we do common sense things. And I know we need a change. It is time for change. And we need somebody that's got the experience. Don't let them fool you. I got 30 years of law enforcement experience doing the job day in and out, all over the place. I got 20 years of being a chief executive officer and doing the hard job of running and leading organizations. In-depth knowledge of public safety. And above all, I believe in honesty, integrity, transparency, accountability. That's at my core, folks. So vote for me when it comes to March 17th. And if you want to catch me afterwards, feel free. We'll still be here for a little while, but thank you guys.